Good afternoon, everyone.
Madam Vice President, thank you so much for doing this and making the time.
Of
I'm just
course.
a little bit busy right now. We want to start on an issue that Americans across the country say is their number one concern, and that's the economy. A question that has been asked of you and everybody.
What the economy, bro? Is that how you started the questions off with Trump, bro? Like, it's two things that I want to point out, and I say this first, just so we make this clear. I have absolutely no affiliation with any racial group whatsoever. That's not how I think. That's not how I do things. I believe in the Martin Luther interpretation of things to a certain degree, to a certain extent, in terms of equality of opportunity. That's what I believe, that we are equal in terms of that, and that I disregard race in almost every single possible instance. But if the opposition is pointing it out, and that's their moral stance, then I'm gonna have to like point out the hypocrisy, which they obviously don't care about. But like, they had three women. That's the first part. The sex thing doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But just want to point out the demographics of that because other people were pointing that out. Other people were making a big deal out of that. There are two men and a woman here, and previously for Trump, it was three women. And the first question that they asked for Trump was of the most heinous, most distraught, most like completely set out to trap. Let me just say this: it was clearly done in political opposition of him. So this is clearly being done in political allegiance, just off the first question, bro. Just off of like the energy coming from the guy in the first question, bro. And I'm not gonna make any like judgments yet, or in terms of not in terms of judgments, but in terms of like declarations yet. But I think he may be gay too, which I don't think any of the people that were in the previous panel were either. Again, that's a political affiliation thing, a social affiliation thing. Like, why do those things have to be so prominent, especially when it comes to like the political conversation? But we know why.
That's on the Democratic side is whether or not voters are better off now than they were 4 years ago. Are they better off now than they were 4 years ago?
So when we came into, well, first of all, let me just say, it is good to be with the National Association of Black Journalists, and I thank you for the work you do and that your members do every day. It is very important that we ensure that this organization and your members always have the resources and the platforms to deliver the voices that must be heard. So I thank you for hosting me today. 4 years ago, when we came in during the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. We came in during the worst public health epidemic in centuries. We came in after the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And a lot of it due in large part to the mismanagement by the former president.
That's also both of those things.
As it relates to COVID and obviously January 6th. And we had then a lot of work to do to clean up a mess. As of today, we have created over 16 million new jobs, over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs.
Was comparable to January 6th.
We have the lowest black unemployment rate in generations. We have invested in small businesses, and they're to the benefit of many people, but including black small businesses, some of the highest rate of creation of new black small businesses in years. We have done the work of capping the cost of prescription medication for our seniors for issues like insulin. And again, I'm speaking to the black journalists who care about all people, but in particular, I'll talk about the impact on black people, where we know black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. And we have now finally capped the cost of insulin for our seniors at $35 a month, capped the cost of prescription medication for our seniors at $2,000 a year, because we, unlike the former president who promised to do it, we finally have allowed Medicare to negotiate drug prices against the big pharmaceutical companies. And these are just some of the accomplishments.
Is now taking the initiative to assist Trump with.
Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Do we have more work to do? Yes. And I will tell you, I do believe that I offer a new generation of.
This is scripted. This is what she's been saying, like in the entire time, like in every single one of her rallies, in the press conference that she did, even in the debate. Not so much because she couldn't, like in the debate I'm talking about. She had to answer the questions that were being posed to her in this different format, especially when comparatively Trump was giving input to the same questions. So like it's not as if Trump isn't pushing the same message across the board, but it's not scripted. And every single time he goes to a different place for his rallies, it's a different speech that he's giving out. And like you have slogans and you have like sayings, which she did initially, but this is clearly different. This is clearly she's been given like almost like a single speech, and she's ad libbing certain words or certain sentences or rephrasing certain things, and not even really rephrasing it, using the same, basically the same dialogue, basically the same exact dialogue from this one speech. And like I think she has to find a different way to repeat or use that tactic of repeating something so that everybody understands and remembers it and associates that with you. She has to use a different tactic because this is clearly, you can clearly tell if you listen to her stuff, if you tune into her stuff, that it's the same speech. Like the same speech. Like not, I'm literally saying like somebody wrote her a certain page speech, 3-4 page speech, and she's been saying it for every single public appearance she's had.
Leadership for our country that is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country, and to do the work that is about bringing some level of optimism and, dare I say, ambition.
You definitely have heard
about what I know is possible in our country. And so my plan for the economy includes what I imagine and believe and call an opportunity economy.
Like people have been posting and retweeting all over social media, the different compilations of Democrats who escalated their rhetoric to then starting to proclaim Trump as like a threat to democracy, and with urgency they made those claims. But even before then, and even now, this conversation is about Trump, who hasn't been in office for 3.5 to 4 years, for an entire term, who hasn't been in office. But it's as if he's an incumbent president. That's how they're trying to position him. That's how their party is trying to position him in our viewpoint. They're trying to make it seem as if Trump's in office and they're going for a new way, a new change, something different. But they are the ones that are actually in power. And polls have shown that people have not necessarily forgotten that. Like they understand that she is the current vice president, that it is her party who is implementing these policies, and that they wouldn't necessarily change from administration to administration. That isn't necessarily the case, especially with the state of the party, especially within a decade time period. So
what we can do to grow an opportunity economy where all people have access to the resources to compete, to apply their incredible work ethic, their ambition, their aspirations, and their dreams, and actually not just get by, but get ahead. And I can talk in more detail about it, but specifically, I'll mention a few things.
Yeah.
One of the big issues that affects people right now in terms of the economy and their economic well-being is we have a shortage of housing supply. It's too expensive. People can't afford to buy a home. You know, we grew up, our parents, where they had the ability to somehow believe the American dream was attainable. Not so much for younger working people. And I recognize that. So my approach is a new approach, which is to say, let's just take this and deal with it head on. And part of my approach is to say, I'm going to employ and engage the private sector, in particular home builders with tax credits, to give them the incentive to create new housing, 3 million by the end of my first term, and understanding that not everybody is, handed a silver spoon, but works hard and is trying to save up for a down payment. Part of my plan under my opportunity economy is to give first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment assistance.
And I was muted while I was talking. I was basically saying that like basic economics, and it's already been reaffirmed through multiple different prestigious economic institutions that this is not necessarily going to have the intended effect that she's saying. It's just going to necessarily will for sure increase the price of houses by 25,000. That's what it would do because they're able, if someone is a seller and they know that you have a certain amount of money guaranteed, then they're able to charge that amount. They know that you are able to pay that. So that's all it's going to do. It's going to guarantee an increase of pricing in housing by 25 grand. And as she mentioned, she's going to give tax cuts, which that's great, but like we mentioned, that's not going to be helping the end user, the principal buyer. That's just going to be inflating the market. You need to do other things to help the market, to lower the price of your market, in particular, build more houses. And that's not necessarily going to be the case by just giving them 25,000.
So they can just get their foot in the door to be able to then engage in what will prove to be their opportunity to build intergenerational wealth. And here's my personal experience coming at that. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother was hardworking. She raised me and my sister Maya. She saved up, and it was only by the time I was a teenager that she could afford to actually buy her first home. And I know.
I'm going to give this example because I'm not sure if I was clear. If you have like a certain number of apples and or like hammers to hammer nails in, and like there's a need for those hammers, like a certain need for those hammers. Like let's say there's 10 a day, and there's a shortage of that, then the hammers that are there are going to go up in price because they're sought after that much more. Now everybody, let's say those 10 people can only like purchase 3 of those hammers. It's gonna be you're able to charge them more for those 3 hammers. So the way to decrease that price is by getting rid of the shortage. So building more hammers, making more hammers available to the market, and that's how the whole free market works in capitalism. Competition. This guy makes a different kind of hammer for a different purpose, or this hammer is better than the other, so you compete like that, and that's how you lower the prices of things. When somebody else is able to offer a better product at a lower price, or the same product at a lower price, then that other product that was dominating the market then has to accommodate that new niche or that new demand. The fact that this is better, this is more affordable. So what are you going to do to compete against that? And if you can't, then you're out. And the problem comes when things like this happen, where the government gets involved and then says that, oh, you can't compete here. I'm going to give you 25,000 so that you can compete. So then they subsidize this particular type of hammer because this particular type of hammer is special, or it does this, or it's the only one that's permitted to do this particular task. As you can see, that's how regulations get into play. Somebody lobbies the government to say that, hey, you need this particular type of tool to do this particular type of job, or else it won't be safe, or else it won't be adequate, or else there could be some serious safety hazards. So the government requires that standard that, hey, you have to do this in order to complete this job, or else this car or plane can't fly, and you have to have this tool to do it. And that's how this company who makes this particular version of this tool then continues to dominate the market as they were. And sure, then you can get some more competition, like other people are making the same tool, and then they start to offer it like that. But as you can imagine, then you can you can lobby for any other types of restrictions in business to help protect your position in the market. Like, for example, lobbying for a higher minimum wage. That means that a competing company who doesn't have the same funds as you now has to waste or use more funds to for the same level of production. So let's say that you're making 100 hammers. If you raise a minimum wage to, let's say, $500 an hour or whatever, and it's currently at $15 an hour, now you have to spend that much more, $485 more, in order to make the same number of hammers that you did before. So that's how you destroy that company, while you, in contrast, the person who's dominating the market, has that extra amount of $485. You can spare that to produce the same amount that you have while they're out. And now you're going to make that money back because the portion of the market that they had, that they were maintaining, they've lost it now because they can't produce that much. They can't do it as well. They're killing their workers. They're having issues. They're having more mistakes now. All different kinds of strategies you can do when the government gets involved. That's why you don't want the government to get involved in things like this. If anything, you want them to get out of the way. That's what their involvement should be. Their involvement should be getting things out of your way so that you can do business better and help the end user better.
And I identify with, I know where I come from.
Madam Vice
And
President.
I know, but I'm just going to finish. I know that so many people work so hard and should have the opportunity to just get their foot in the door. Again, so it's not just about getting by, but getting ahead. Please.
I'd like to ask you more about the opportunity economy. Housing is a part of it, as well as expanding the earned income tax credit,
Yes.
financial support, as you mentioned, for first-time buyers, and a $50,000 tax deduction for startups and small businesses.
Yes.
But I want to talk to you about the squeeze that millions of Americans are also dealing with that impacts their ability to work and make money, and that is child care and elder care. And it's a squeeze for millions of people. In some parts of the country, it costs more for child care than for rents. I think
That's right.
Bloomberg recently reported an average of $33,000 a year. So I'm just wondering, you mentioned that in your opportunity economy, a child tax credit, but that's just
The
one
way you
part
phrase
of
these
the
questions, bro.
ecosystem.
Right.
Please tell us, what
These are
plans will you
softball.
propose to guarantee that families can actually afford child care and elder care?
So to your point, it is sadly the state of affairs in our country that working people often have to decide to either be able to work or be able to afford childcare. Like they can't afford childcare and actually do the work that they want to do because it's too expensive and it doesn't actually level out in terms of the expense versus the income. My plan is that no family, no working family should pay more than 7% of their income in childcare. Because I know that when you talk about the return on that investment, allowing people to work, allowing people to pursue their dreams in terms of how they want to work, where they want to work,
Is she implying-
benefits us all. It strengthens the entire economy. We saw, for example, during the pandemic what
lot of
happened.
BS.
And it sadly has dissipated as a conversation that we need to resuscitate, which is the number of women that had to leave the workforce because of a lack of childcare and home health care. And so many of our families, and in particular women, end up carrying the responsibility. Men do too, of course. What we call people who are in the sandwich generation.
Exactly.
Who have young children and are also taking care of their parents. And it is just absolutely too expensive for them to be able to work and do that. So my plan is not only about 7% of income for working people for childcare, but also we need to do better for our childcare providers and our home healthcare providers in terms of ensuring that they receive the wages that they deserve based on the dignity of their work. I have spent time with home healthcare providers, and their work is some of the most
saying what she's
taxing
gonna
work you
do.
can
She said
imagine.
7%. What does that mean?
I
Are you
actually,
going to
when my
try
mother was
and
sick with cancer,
remove restrictions
did
to
a
get
lot
it
in
to
terms of taking
7% so
care of
that
her.
the
And
average is at 7%, or are you going to like
the
subsidize them?
work
What are you gonna
that
do?
is
You're gonna-
about
you're
taking
gonna give
care
away
of a
more the
loved one,
treasury
in
for this? What are you
particular
gonna
an
do?
elder, is extraordinarily heavy in terms of the emotional toll, the time it takes, and we do.
This is the problem that people were pointing out in the debate, that she wasn't actually saying anything. She's just giving you emotional mumbo jumbo to try and relate to you, but she's not telling you what she's going to do. In this entire portion here where she's talking about the tax credit and all this stuff, the child care stuff, she hasn't said a word. She's only said bring it down to 7%. Nothing else is like, come on, bro. We're
do it because that is what we do, but not everyone has the ability to take time from work to do it, and they need help, and we need to make sure we have home health care workers that can help them. But I want to also get back to the earlier point that you made about extending the child tax credit. So part of my new approach is we need to expand the child tax credit. And so part of my plan that is under an opportunity economy is to extend and expand the child tax credit to $6,000 so that young families
not
in
okay,
particular,
bro.
for the
You have
first
to
year
say
of
what
their
you're gonna do,
child's life, which is an extraordinarily important time in their development, have the resources to be able to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy children's clothing, and not have to worry about whether they're going to be able to meet their other needs. And I don't need to remind anybody here, especially these esteemed journalists, but when we expanded the child tax credit a couple years ago, we reduced Black child poverty by half. And so again, if you talk about the benefit, and if you think about the benefit to the economy overall, it strengthens our economy to do things like pay attention to affordable child care, affordable home health care, and extending the child tax credit.
Madam Vice President, Black men,
She
as
didn't
you
say
know,
anything.
are a closely watched
She
voting
didn't
bloc.
say
You've
anything.
hosted Black men at your residence.
Yep.
You have engaged Black men and centered them in your economic opportunity tour. But polling shows that some Black men, particularly young Black men, are considering voting for Donald Trump, and they see him as better for the economy. What is your message to young Black male voters who feel left out of this economy, and how can your economic policies materially change their lives?
So I appreciate the spirit of the question, but I'll tell you, I've often been asked this question in a way that I've had to respond by first saying that I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that Black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am Black, but because the policies and the perspectives I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities. And I intend to be a president for all people. Specifically as it relates to what we need to do, to your point around economic opportunity. Yes, I started way before I was at the top of the ticket at what I called an economic opportunity tour, focused on Black men. Understanding that, for example, we have so many entrepreneurs in the community who do not have access to capital, but they've got great ideas, an incredible work ethic, the ambition, the aspiration, the dream, but don't have the relationships necessarily. So my work has included, as vice president, getting billions more dollars into community banks, including working with the big banks to do that, so that we can increase access to capital for our small businesses, for our startups. Part of my plan under my economic opportunity plan going forward is that right now, startup entrepreneurs, small businesses only get a tax deduction of $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So I'm expanding that to $50,000.
You're not starting
Understanding,
anything.
again, that when people have the opportunity
not
to
involved
have
in the
the
amount that you have to
resources
use
to
to
get
start.
started, they're going to put the good ideas, they're going to put the hard work into it. And part of what I also know is that our young Black men, our Black men, just like any group of people, anybody, our small businesses are really the backbone of our economy overall. And when they do better economically, we all do better. Part of my work is about understanding what we need to do in dealing with, for example, the historic inequities that have faced the Black community around home ownership, right? I don't have to go through the history with anybody here about what that has meant in
know
terms
why I
of
reacted to
redlining,
this, bro.
what that has meant in terms
Nothing has
of
been
biases
said
and
here,
home
bro.
appraisals,
I should only react
and
to
what
debates. I'm
the
getting
impact
upset
it
that
has had
wasting time
on
listening to it.
stemming the opportunity to build intergenerational wealth because of those obstacles. So part of the work that I have done and will continue to do is identify, speak truth about those obstacles, and address them. Another example is medical debt. 1 in 4 Black.
She just said she's going to speak truth to and address them. What does that mean, bro? What does that mean, bro? What does that mean?
Families or individuals is more likely to carry medical debt than others. So part of my perspective, and as vice president, part of the work that we have done is to say that we're going to eliminate medical debt from being on your credit score. Because until now, medical debt worked against your credit score, and people know their credit score like your weight, right? You know that number. And the difference between what that number is and what it needs to be is the difference between you being able to get a car loan, a small business loan, or even a leasing on an apartment. And so part of my approach is understanding the obstacles that traditionally and currently exist to allow anyone, including Black men, be able to achieve economic wealth. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't think it is sufficient to just only talk about economic policy around reducing unemployment. It is an important marker, and I'm proud of the work that we've done thus far, but it should be a baseline there, everybody's working. The point is, do people have an opportunity to build wealth? If that's what they choose to do, if that's what they want to do. And a lot of my perspective as we go forward is just that. I believe that there are a lot of opportunities that are available to the American people if we see people and understand what they want for themselves and their families and then meet them where they are.
Madam Vice President, I
What
want to
does that
switch
mean,
gears
bro?
a
What did you
little
just
bit
say?
and
What does
talk
that mean?
about-
What does that mean? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about that? What is that? What would you? This is like the worst politician I've seen, bro. Maybe not the worst. The most annoying politician I've seen. Look at Millet. This is like I'm trying to point this out so that you can open and broaden your horizon of this particular viewpoint, so that you can see why I'm so like frustrated about this, why this is so frustrating in general. Like, there are a multitude of different types of eccentric or normal politicians who are all concise and get to the point. They're not going to ramble. They're even like I do. I ramble a lot sometimes too. These are professional or skilled or practiced speakers. For her to be doing this, that means it's practice. She's intentionally speaking like this. She's intentionally filling the airtime with useless information, useless claims, just trying to relate to you or just trying to mask the actual answer to the question that she isn't giving. That's the best way I can put it. You can look at a variety of different politicians, whether it's other Democratic politicians that are leading her party, such as like Chuck Schumer, for example, Nancy Pelosi. Like, they don't do this. They don't like mask the entire answer to the question with something else. They'll mask the answer to the question, or they'll avoid answering the question, or they'll say some BS. Don't get me wrong, but they're not gonna like ramble on and pretend to you and then never answer. That's what she did. She made you listen for so long that you didn't necessarily pay attention to that. She just used one or two words and addressed it, but didn't give you a definitive response to the question, or even a chance for the journalist to push back or say anything. You know how interactive the conversation here at this venue was with Donald Trump and the journalists? Like, it was a back and forth. They were even interrupting each other. When has that happened even once here? I've been watching for 29 minutes, bro. The first, I think 3 or 4 minutes were just silence where they were loading it. But like, and not once have they interrupted or given any type of pushback whatsoever. Like, not to mention the heinous questions that were being like, come on, bro. Like, have you ever heard the phrase "playing on rookie"? Like, they got Trump playing on like extreme super vet and all-star, and she's playing on rookie. Like,
about the war in Gaza. You've called for a ceasefire hostage deal and a two-state solution as an end to the war
Ask her
for
about
many months
Afghanistan.
now. And while you've expressed support for Israel to defend itself, a two-state solution and a ceasefire are at odds with what Benjamin Netanyahu has said is their right to defense. If it matters, as you say, how Israel defends itself, where do you see the line between aggression and defense? And our power as Israel's ally to do something?
Okay, a lot to unpack in what you just said. So let's start with this. I absolutely believe that this war has to end.
God, bro, I
And it
don't
has
wanna
to
listen
end
to
as
this.
soon
I
as
don't
possible.
want to. I really
And the way that will be achieved is by getting a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And we are working around the clock to
She gonna
achieve
talk about the
that
hostages
end.
that got killed recently?
Stepping back, October 7, 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered, and actually and some Americans, by the way, in that number, slaughtered. Young people who were attending a concert, women were horribly raped. And yes, so I have said, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And,
But Madam Vice
no,
President,
let me
I think
finish.
my ask is the
But no,
difference
let me
between
finish.
aggression and
No,
defense
but it's
here.
important to put it in context, which is what I'm doing, and I'll get to that. And so how it does so matters. And far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, women and children. We have seen with horror the images coming out of Gaza. And we have to take that seriously. And we have to agree that not only must we end this war, but we have to have a goal of a two-state solution, because there must be stability and peace in that region, inasmuch as what we do in our goal is to ensure that Israelis have security and Palestinians in equal measure have security, have self-determination, and dignity.
A question for you on that, though. What levers does the U.S. have to support Palestinians
she didn't answer. What's the difference between aggression and defense? You didn't answer.
in their right to self-determination? And is it even possible as Israel's ally?
Well, absolutely. I will tell you, I have been actively involved in, for example, meeting not only with Israeli officials, but with Arab officials to talk about how we can construct a day after scenario where we participate in ensuring those exact goals that I outlined, including as part of the principles that should be applied to those goals, that there be no reoccupation of Gaza, that there be no changing of the territorial lines in Gaza, that there be an ability to have security in the region for all concerned in a way that we create stability, and let us also recognize in a way that ensures that Iran is not empowered in this whole scenario in terms of the peace and stability of the region. But absolutely, the United States of America absolutely has a
party
role,
had to deal with
which is
Iran.
why we have been active, in particular with the Qataris
Why
and
they're
the
not empowered when your
Egyptians,
party had to deal with Iran?
around attempting to get a deal done and get it done as quickly as possible.
But Madam Vice President, just to follow up really quickly, is there a specific policy change that you, as President of the United States, would say you would do that would help this along? Because you've gotten a lot of credit for
The second guy had to push
emphasizing
again and
humanity
rephrase the
of
question
Palestinians.
again, 'cause
But
she
what
wasn't
I often
answering.
hear from folks is that there's no policy change that either you or President Biden have gone and said they would do. Is there a specific policy change as president that you would do in our helping of Israel?
We
in
need
this
to
war?
get this deal done, and we need to get it done immediately, and
in the
that
way
is
that-
my position, and that is my policy. We need to get this deal done.
But in the way that we send weapons, in the way that we interact as their ally, are there specific policy changes?
Well, Eugene, for example, one of the things that we have done that I am entirely supportive of is the pause that we've put on the 2,000-pound bombs. And so there is some leverage that we have had and used. But ultimately, the thing that is going to unlock everything else in that region is getting this deal done. And I'm not going to
You're gonna put
disclose
a pause on
private
those
conversations, but I
missiles
will tell you, I've
that
had
can
direct
reach deep into
conversations
Russia?
with the Prime Minister, with the President of
You gonna put a
Israel,
pause on
with
those?
Egyptian leaders, and with our allies. And I think we've made ourselves very clear this deal needs to get done in the best interest of everyone in the region, including getting those hostages out who, I mean, we saw the latest example of what happened with the six most recently, one of whom was an American citizen.
But What do you say to those that say that's not enough?
Dressed it
That
up.
stopping the 2,000-pound bombs the one time wasn't enough, that this administration, your possible administration, has to do more?
Well, we are doing the work of putting the pressure on all parties involved to get the deal done. But let me be very clear also. I support Israel's ability to defend itself. And I support the need for Palestinians to have.
So what I can clarify here to people who don't know exactly what the background behind this is. We are their allies. We can provide them weapons because we're their allies. That's legal. Remember, Congress makes rules, and these are things that we permit. What we don't permit is the free use of our weapons and the free trade of our weapons for whatever particular reason. If you're making weapons in the United States or you're a weapons company, the United States government is monitoring that. And there are laws that control who and when you can give those weapons out. That's what she's talking about in terms of letting these things be done. We can permit our companies to provide these weapons to them. That's what it is. That's how sinister it also is, too. Explore or be as imaginative as you want. But think about that.
Dignity, self-determination, and security as we move forward and get a two-state deal done. But right now, the thing we need to get done is this hostage deal and this ceasefire deal. We need a ceasefire. We need the hostage deal.
I want to switch gears to racial justice, Madam Vice President. Last month, you eulogized Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Yeah.
Jackson Lee's signature bill, one of a few, was H.R. 40, which would create a commission to study the history of U.S. slavery and study the issue of reparations. She introduced H.R. 40 every session of Congress, taking up the mantle from Congressman John Conyers. This is a bill that you have co-sponsored as a U.S. Senator. Yet, this has, despite the fact that this has been, similar commissions have been created on the state level and on the local level, is yet to pass in Congress, let alone come out of committee. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and other advocates have called for President Biden to take executive action to create this commission. Would you, as president, take executive action to create this commission, or do you believe that it should happen in Congress?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, Sheila Jackson Lee, she was an extraordinary leader who we just recently lost, and she was a friend and a real champion for so many issues. So I feel compelled to say that about her. On the issue of what we need to do going forward, look, first of all, we just need to speak truth about history in spite of the fact that some people would try and erase history and try and teach our children otherwise. We need to speak truth about the generational impact of our history in terms of the generation.
I want to clarify that because that's an important thing to address. What she's talking about in the whole erasing history thing is the DEI, critical race theory initiatives that her party or the political officers in her party have championed throughout the United States. So it's not just at the top level, it's all the way down to education and lower municipal courts and different things like that, even sheriffs. They're talking about recontextualizing what we know as U.S. history to emphasize it in a different dichotomy or narrative. The base matter is that everything's just based on racism and power, and that's all of history should be looked in that particular context. Racism and power. That's the recontextualization, and that's what she means by erasing history. There, once again, this party is exceptional at rephrasing things to make them seem favorable or not as heinous as they actually are. This is one of those instances. They're talking about recontextualizing history or adding a strong racial component, a strong racial lens to how you view everything. The history that we learned, or that's public in the United States, that's taught in public schools as well. And I'm not sure, you obviously know that in whatever jurisdiction that you're in or whatever state that you're in, you could be given some different curriculum, however it is. But here in Florida, for example, we learned about all the extent of slavery and all the different things that happened along the way, and how it started. And then once you go into higher education schools, higher education public schools, like high school, for whatever, you also have the opportunity, and they also, in within the curriculum, not exactly, but you do learn about the full extent of slavery. That's mostly done in middle school, but like, yeah, you learn the full extent of that from the beginning and you learn a lot about this in government as well too, and in history, um, the different concepts of like the three fifths concept, and how it's like three slaves to three fifths of a slave, and all that, dehumanizing slaves, all through representation. That's what it's actually about. That's what it's actually about. All that is just rephrased and recontextualized to cover up for power, not racial power, not racial divide, political power. They wanted slaves to count within their regions, just like now. They want people who don't necessarily have the appropriate status during the time period to count for political power. You already know how it works in the House of Representatives. The more people that you have in your state or in your particular region, the more representatives you have for your state. So if your state has a bajillion more people than another state, you're going to have more representatives in the House of Representatives. So you'll have more power, more sway, more votes, and more control. So if one party happens to monopolize that particular state, then they have that much more power on the federal level. So that was the attempt at the time period too. They wanted to use the heinous, inhuman act of slavery to also benefit them politically. And that's where the divide came. That's where it was like a whole three-fifths situation. And that's just one portion of it. And you got like the dates of when it actually started. When it actually started, you get the slave trade. You got the realities of the slave trade that they also try to recontextualize. There's a variety of things along the way. Like, the only thing I would no, there's nothing. It's just a recontextualization of history into a biased racial lens, where everything is just about race and power, just like it is in the what's the proper term for it? The gender radicalists, like people who are pushing the gender theory, who implement gender theory too. It's the same concept. It's about sex and power. That's what their recontextualization is. That's why it's so different and so contradictory to everything that you've grown up with. And yet you had to learn that viewpoint. Anybody who believes that learned that viewpoint, because it's not the standard natural perception that any human not even grows up with, like in terms of influenced by your society, but just if you were out in the wild, it wouldn't be that way. There's no equality. There's none of that. None of that works that way. None of that works that way, and it's confused. All of those concepts are confused and pushed. Remember, these are theories that we're talking about, like critical race theory, like gender theory, like they're not practiced. There's not. When they are practiced, you end up with like heinous acts, genocides, mass rapes, like abortions on a scale of millions. Like, you end up with heinous acts when you participate in these theories.
Generational impact of slavery, the generational impact of redlining, of Jim Crow law. I could go on and on and on. These are facts that have had impact. And we need to speak truth about it. And we need to speak truth about it in a way that is about deriving solutions. And frankly, I think that we, and part of that is studying it to figure out exactly what we need to do. But part of what we can do right now is, for example, what I'm talking about in terms of building an opportunity economy, which is addressing explicitly the obstacles that historically and currently exist and dealing with them. Student loan debt, medical debt, bias in home appraisals, what we need to do in terms of dealing with an issue that I have championed for years, Black maternal mortality, which is the fact that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth than other women. And we know that the reasons for that include disparities that pre-exist her pregnancy, including disparities that exist in the system during her pregnancy. So all
No,
of
it
those
doesn't. It has
things
to do with
must
the
be
person.
addressed.
But do you
There's
have a
another thing they
position
do. They
on
try
whether
to
that should happen, this commission should happen
they try to claim that the actual issue is one thing when it's really something else, and it's usually adjacent.
through executive order or via Congress?
I think Congress ultimately will have the ability to do this work. I'm not discounting the importance of any executive action, but ultimately Congress. Because if you're going to talk about it in any substantial way, there will be hearings, there will be a level of public education and dialogue that, and I think that was part of the spirit behind the congressional action thus far, to ensure that everyone can participate in this conversation in a way that elevates knowledge about history and the reference points that have that are the impetus of this conversation. Especially, again, when people are trying to deny history, when people are, so-called leaders are saying that enslaved people benefited from slavery. I mean, let's talk about the delta here in terms of the work that needs to be done. It's profound.
I gotta stop muting. She basically, just to repeat what I said, she basically just said that no. They asked, hey, Congress is gonna do a reparations commission. They didn't do it. An executive order from Joe Biden hasn't come across to get this commission done, so that we can get a bill created and passed to Congress. Are you gonna do it? Like, are you gonna get a commission passed through an executive order? Like, what are you gonna do? She said no, she's not, and that she wants to have this. She's gonna have it. It will be pushed through Congress. That Congress should have to start a commission because everybody's gonna have to talk about it, and so that you can see, you as the Black journalist and you as Black people can see that they're not going to pass it and all the conversation that they're going to have. She wants to expose everybody else in the opposition party, to show them as to why they don't want a reparations bill, or why they don't want reparations, and then accuse them of what she's been accusing them of changing history. Of, hey, oh, you don't want this just because the change of history and all that, not because of any other plausible or reasonable reason as to why you would not want reparations. That's what just happened. Just summarize that there.
Madam Vice President, I want to move to Springfield, Ohio, and what's happening there. We've seen school closures, parents worried about their kids leaving the home because of racist conspiracy theories that I won't repeat here, but they have been repeated by leaders on the Republican side, President Trump, former President Trump, and Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance. From your perspective, is this just a case of irredeemable racism that can't be mitigated by any rational action, or is this a situation in which a federal response could help this community heal? There's a question of resources and...
Well, no, I'll let you finish and then I'll speak.
No, please.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. You know, there were children, elementary school children, who, it was school photo day. You remember what that's like? Going to school on
Just a case of...
slavery. I mean, let's talk, it's profound.
Madam Vice President, I want to move to Springfield, Ohio, and what's happening there. We've seen school closures, parents worried about their kids.
When you have these positions, when you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning. I learned at a very young stage of my career that the meaning of my words could impact whether somebody was free or in prison. As Attorney General, I was of California,
Bro,
fifth
I
largest
hate
economy in the
politicians, bro.
world.
I hate
I was
politicians, bro.
acutely aware
Like,
that my words could move
the
markets.
skill or the extent to which they go to be skilled
When
at
you
lying to
are
your face
bestowed
and
with a
combining it with
microphone that is
emotion.
that big,
It's
there is a
heinous, bro.
profound
It's
responsibility
deceitful.
that comes with that. That is an extension of
So intensely deceitful.
what should not be lost in this moment, this concept of the public trust.
I don't have to
then
go. I don't have to tell you to go online and look up all
Understand what the
videos
public
of
trust
Springfield,
means.
Ohio,
It
and all the
means
things
that
are
you
going on.
have been invested with
Yes,
trust
there are
to be
racists,
responsible in the way you use your
racists
words, much
in
less
that,
how you
in
conduct
that
yourself.
community. Yes, they are 100%,
And
100%
especially
are racist
when
and
you have been
exacerbating
and
the
then
issues that are
seek
going
to
on.
be again
100%.
President
Guess
of the
what?
United
There are
States of
also issues that are
America.
going on there that were caused by, in particular, her.
And so
her
I go back
administration.
to it's a crying
Overpopulating
shame,
a particular
literally.
region that couldn't
What's
sustain
happening to
a
those
migrant
families, those
population.
children in that community, not to mention
Then, when
what
the
is
issues are coming
happening
out,
in
public
terms
issues are
of,
coming out to expose
look, you say you
what's
care
going
about
on
law
there.
enforcement,
They try to pretend that
law
that isn't the
enforcement
case.
resources being put into this because of these serious threats that are being issued against.
Go watch the videos about Springfield, Ohio, and you'll see everything that everybody's talking about is true. All of it. They are indeed going after people's pets. They're indeed very disruptive. They are indeed um, an influx of migrants that have gone there, and they are indeed racist there. All of that, 100%. Every single part of that is 100% true, and there are videos online to confirm every single component of that. All of that, and all those issues arise because of their administration, not the racists. Those are already there. We can already talk about that. Those are already there. But bringing all those migrants into that community there to take of that small community's resources and have them split already, like, we're not talking about that you can't help certain migrants because there are situations across the world that sure you want to do that. The reason why this is a problem is because there's an influx of illegals that have entered into the country that are straining the resources of multiple different states. So that's the big problem. So the ones that you want to help in, or the smaller portion that you do want to help in, now they're getting mushed into the same conversation because they're causing the same problems. So if it were just a small group of people that were causing these problems, sure. It probably wouldn't even make a national story, sure. Those would be something that you have to deal with, just the same as you have to deal with it now. The problem is that they're denying it, that it's happening here, and that the same thing is also happening in other places, and they are the cause of it. Again, this is not about them moving those migrants. It's okay to help migrants, a certain number of them, as long as we have the resources to help them. What's happening here is illegal migration, not in Springfield, Ohio, but across the country, is illegal migration to levels that are unimaginable, past the straining of resources. And not only did they remove policy that permitted this to occur, but now they've also mentioned several times now, 3 of the party leaders, Pelosi, her, and I think it was Schumer as well, have mentioned trying to provide citizenship to the people who have made it. Not only change laws and remove policy to permit them more of our shared resources illegally that they're here, the ones that are illegally here, to provide them more of our shared resources, but also facilitate a path to citizenship easier for them. So just to give you that full picture, this is what happened. They weakened and removed policy at the border that allowed more people to come in. As in, like, whenever you encounter somebody at the border, instead of holding them and then turning them back and recording their information and taking them down, instead you take their information and then you let them go. And sometimes you don't even take their information. That's what they're pointing out. And it mentions several times for, like, small children, for example, that they don't take their information because of certain rules, and that they just let them go, and that they don't even confirm if they're with, they say who they are and different things like that. all kinds of policy restrictions or procedures that have been removed. And the removing of those policies and procedures because of their political viewpoint has permitted this. It's incentivizing people to come to the border. And that's why there are 10 million people, 15, I think it's like, Trump was saying like 20, 21. They're saying it's like the actual number was like 8 or something like that. But it's going to be in between those numbers. It's probably around like 15 or 16 or something like that. Ridiculous. And it may even be what Trump's saying. Like the actual predictions may even be what Trump's saying, where it's 20. But we know it's for sure more than 8. And it's probably in between those two numbers of 20 and 8. But like it's for like millions more than 8 for sure. Remember, this is just what they've accounted for. And we know that there are millions more than they've accounted for that enter. That's why it's for sure more than 8. Then, like I said, they're trying to remove laws and create policy that provides more of our shared resources to those who have entered illegally, as well as facilitating an easier, quicker path for citizenship for those who have entered illegally. So you commit a crime, you're going to be given resources because you committed the crime, and then you're going to be given citizenship and then all the privileges of an American citizen because you committed a crime and a felony. We have the right to borders. As American citizens, you have the right to borders. As a citizen to any country, you have the right to borders.
Against a community that is living a productive, good life before this happened. And spewing lies that are grounded in tropes that are age-old. And look, I said it not very far from here the other day at the debate. This is not new. This is not new in terms of these tropes.
So bad.
This is not new in terms of where it's coming from. And, you know, whether it is refusing to rent to black families, whether it is taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times against 5 innocent black and Latino teenagers, the Central Park 5, calling for their execution, whether it is referring to the first black president of the United States with a lie, birther lies. And look, the American people deserve, and I do believe want better than this. I do believe that. I know, the vast majority of us as Americans know we have so much more in common than what separates us. I know that. I know that regardless of someone's background, their race, their gender, their geographic location, I know that people are deeply troubled by what is happening to that community in Springfield, Ohio. And it's got to stop. And we've got to say that you cannot be entrusted with standing behind the seal of the President of the United States of America, engaging in that hateful rhetoric that, as usual, is designed to divide us as a country, is designed to have people pointing fingers at each other. It's designed to do that. And I think most people in our country, regardless of their race, are starting to see through this nonsense and to say, you know what, let's turn the page on this. This is exhausting and it's harmful and it's hateful and grounded in some age-old stuff that we should.
Out of the two political parties, who disparages white men the most? Out of the two political parties, who champions women's rights? We were equal under the law. Women's rights. We were equal under the law. Which political party? Out of the two. Out of the two. champions equity, which is the allocation of resources based on, for example, racial standards. Divide, point fingers, turn the page. I'm seeing through it, miss. I'm seeing through it.
Should not have the tolerance for. So let's turn the page and chart a new way forward and say, you can't have that microphone again.
Madam Vice President, I'm switching gears again.
Okay.
Quick question. I want to talk to you about gun control. So you've said you support an assault weapons ban and universal background checks, and we actually learned during the debate that you are a gun owner. But in cities like Philadelphia, handguns are responsible for most homicides and violent crime. The most recent FBI data shows handguns were involved in 59% of murders in our country. How will you address the issue of the use of handguns? Because a push for an assault weapons ban only addresses a significant but small part of the problem.
So, first of all, yes, I am a gun owner, and Tim Walz is a gun owner, and we're not trying to take anybody's guns away from them. But we do need an assault weapons ban. Assault weapons are designed to kill a lot of human beings quickly and have no...
Just to give you more clarity, and I think she may even point it out here. I'm not sure if she will, because this question, this is a good question for her. The reason why an assault weapons ban is BS is because of the categorization. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. There are rifles and there are handguns. It's pretty much differently. That's pretty much the biggest difference. You have machine guns, but those are automatic. That's the biggest difference. It's semi-automatic versus automatic. And whenever they try and talk about assault rifles, and they try to mention like how fast you can shoot pretty fast with these handguns. You can shoot pretty fast with any of these things. It's about the action. It's about the actual mechanism that's involved in shooting. When you hold and it just empties out the entire clip, that's an automatic rifle. That's a military style rifle. Not legal in the United States. Not legal. An AR-15 doesn't do that. Modifications on the AK don't do that. That's not what's legal here. That's why an assault weapons ban is indeed trying to take your guns, because they're misclassifying purposely what they're talking about. A rifle, like an AR style rifle, a rifle, you can shoot as far as you want. You can leave holes in people. But that's not the same thing as an automatic firearm. But they're trying to make it seem as if this particular platform, the AR platform in particular, is the flagship of what the military uses to hunt down heinous terrorists. And you want to use it here next to school children? Whoa. When, as the reporter pointed out, the majority of violence is done with handguns. Come after those.
Weapons
place
ban,
and have
yes.
no place, I'm going to get to it,
Yes.
and have no place on the streets of a civil society. We need universal background checks, which, to your point about handguns,
We already have those.
is about saying that it is just reasonable to want reasonable gun safety laws that say we should do background checks, that we ought to know. It's just reasonable. You might want to
We
know
already do that.
before someone can buy a lethal weapon. If they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others, you might just want to know.
already-
And
And
respectfully,
uni-
we do understand that.
But you're asking
Yes.
about...
I'm
you're
asking specifically about handguns, because many of those handguns aren't purchased in places.
Universal background checks
Yes.
apply to handguns.
Yes.
They do.
But in
And
many
s-
instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also
I have to go back.
been
She just
protesting
lied.
at
Bro,
a
she just
gun-
went back on
I
herself saying
also
this. I
have
hope
been
they break
very
this up.
adamant for years.
But in
And
many
s-
instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a...
Yes.
They do.
But in
And
many instances, those handguns, because many of those handguns aren't
universal
purchased in
background
places.
checks
Yes.
apply to handguns.
Two ways you could take it. She's going back on the bullshit she just spewed, just like the rest of the entire interview, about background checks. They already apply to them. They already apply to handguns. Like, what are you talking about? We already have background checks. Or she's saying that this new concept of elevated, invasive, illegal background checks, which are unconstitutional, is what will apply to handguns, which she's not. Already. She said the words already, right?
Specifically about handguns, because many of those handguns aren't
Universal
purchased in
background
places.
checks
Yes.
apply to handguns.
Yes.
They do.
But in
And
many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully.
Yeah, the reporter and her response both confirm the BS that she just mentioned. The BS she just finished spewing. Background checks are already in place. We already have them, and they already cover handguns, just like they cover any other firearm that you can purchase. What they're trying to talk about are the specifics, the small instances. Like, for example, if you're a father and you have a son and you're gonna go out to shoot, can you give him your firearm? That's what they're talking about. Do a background check on him. When you're with your friend and you're going out shooting, you can't give him a gun. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the neighbor that lives next to you for 15 years, who's a police officer. They're talking about he needs a background check before you give him that gun. You can't sell him that gun. No, bro. No, that's not how it works. You're not going to continue to infringe on not the first, the very second, bro. The first, A, you can say whatever you want. So you can talk, you can speak up when the government's on that BS. Two, when the government's on that BS and you've spoken up, here's what you can do to defend yourself. What are you talking about, bro? Like, no, bro, you're not finna. No, bro. No, bro. I can't stop your automatic rifle with this handgun, and now you wanna restrict my handguns too, bro? Nah, bro. Nah, bro. I already have to use a downgraded rifle up against your automatic, and now you want to restrict? No, bro. I should have the same force you do, the same exact force, bro. And there's no reason not to have the same exact force you do. Exactly the same exact force you do. Exactly. I'm not a criminal. The same exact force you have, the same exact force. I should be able to have rockets, man. I should be able to have rockets. You know why? Because they want a monopoly on power and because of secrets. The only one that's reasonable is secrets.
Which is why I also
And I wouldn't give them up for
have been
secrets.
very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago about the gun show loophole and why we need to close that. Because what ends up happening
exist.
is that gun shows at flea markets, gun
Already been proven wrong and debunked hundreds of times. You can find videos all across the internet where that's not the case. They will not give you guns. They will not give you guns. They will not. And they're all strapped. So you pull any kind of BS. The whole event's putting you down. Everybody there's putting you down. Don't. Bro, this is like,
dealers
I want to
are
stop
not,
watching this,
under
bro.
existing law in the past, required to register their sales. And so you are exactly right that a lot of homicides, for example, a good number of them, I don't have the statistic in front of my mind, are committed with illegally purchased guns. And that's why we need to address each entry point in the issue.
That's not what that is. That's not what that is. That is not what that is. She's trying to imply that you go to a flea market, you tell the guy, hey, give me a gun, you buy a gun from him and you're done. You go kill somebody and then it's purchased illegal. That's not what the fuck happens. I'm sorry. I apologize for cursing, for getting elevated like that. It's just, this is like, these are blatant lies. She did a blatant lie in the debate too, saying about the whole Charlottesville thing, about the whole Nazis thing. When even the networks that they've been on have already debunked this. They're like, yeah, no, just listen to the rest of the clip. They've already dropped that. Like, this has been debunked years ago, bro. That's not a thing. You cannot go to a flea market and get a gun. The people there will require a background check. This is why restricting gun laws doesn't work. Because what the lady said is true. People are killing and doing illegal crimes using handguns. That's the primary thing to do with. Even school shootings, the primary weapon is a handgun. Like, if I get a gun illegally, creating laws to stop me from getting guns is not going to stop me from getting that gun illegally. If I go to the cartel and they give me a gun, you saying that the cartel can't give me a gun is not going to stop the cartel from giving me a gun. All you did was just stop the store owner, the legal store owner who went through all the certifications, has all the licenses required, has paid the government through out the ass, has already paid his due to the industry to try to get his small little portion cut just so he can survive. Now you're making it harder for him. Primarily though, you're taking away the power. You're eroding the people's ability to defend themselves up against the government. That's as simply put it as it is. As simply as you can put it. This has nothing to do with self-defense. We are not talking about you protecting your family. We're not talking about you going hunting. We're not talking about none of that. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about you as an American citizen have a responsibility and duty that if the government becomes tyrannical and out of hand, you are responsible for dethroning and removing that government. That is your responsibility. That is your responsibility. You're responsible for that. You're accountable for that. So if the government ever takes over the United States tyrannically, it is your fault that it happened. You permitted through claims and platitudes about safety and violence that an entity or a governing body removed your ability to defend yourself adequately. That's what you did. Tell me George Washington wouldn't slap her. Tell me Ben Franklin wouldn't kick the current Democratic Party in the chest, bro. Tell me the original boys, bro. The founding fathers, bro. Tell me they wouldn't run up on old boys and be like, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? People don't know. When you started earlier talking about history, dive into some history. The army used to borrow weapons and cannons from civilians during the Civil War. Borrow them from private entities. Like, what are we talking about here, bro? Like, nah, bruh. No. And I'm done with this, bro. I'm out of here, bro. Like, I'm out of here.